these accusations, and Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer says the investigation will move forward.
Something I think every American is concerned about. I think every American wants to know the truth. We're going to continue. This investigation will move forward. We have several other witnesses that are going to come in for depositions and transcribed interviews. We will do everything in our ability to be transparent.
Here with me now is Hans von Spakovsky, Senior Legal Fellow and Manager of the Election Law Reform Initiative at the Heritage Foundation, and Leigh Vinocur, a board-certified physician and Medical Director of Game Day Men's Health. Thank you both for joining me this afternoon. I want to ask you, Leigh, because you're also the author of Never Let Them See You Sweat. This was a situation where it seems like the doctor was not allowing them to see him sweat by pleading the fifth. But I have to ask you, where does HIPAA fall into all of this, Leigh?
Well, HIPAA is very important. I mean, any human, whether you're president or not, has certain rights to their health, but certainly if you're president, and the implication that a physician would lie about something so serious. I have done mental status exams, competency exams, and we take that very seriously. And, you know, you cannot have trial by soundbite, because what politician hasn't had gaffes or anything else on the air? You need a clinical exam. Sometimes you need blood work and brain imaging. You need mental status exam, neurocognitive testing. And back in February 2024, Dr. O'Connor said that President Biden was fit for duty. And you swear an oath when you're a doctor. So if he really wasn't fit for duty for one of the highest offices in the country, I don't think he would put his medical license on the line or the American people to lie about something like that.
And Hans, some are saying that Dr. O'Connor did indeed lie and the American people deserve transparency. Hans, Texas Democratic Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett speaking to reporters after the hearing saying this.
As someone who has served as a criminal defense attorney and actually been in courtrooms, it's kind of astounding to hear someone say, if you invoke the Fifth Amendment, that is only because you are guilty. We have a constitutional right that anyone who may be under fire can invoke.
Hans, what do you make about her line of reasoning over invoking the Fifth Amendment?
And look, everyone is overcomplicating this. As a doctor, there were two potential privileges that O'Connor could assert. One is the doctor-patient privilege, but that only covers medically related communications with a patient. That can't be waived. On the other hand, that's not what he was asked. What he was asked was, were you asked to lie about the health of the president? That wouldn't be covered by the patient-doctor privilege. It would be covered by executive privilege normally, because that was something that occurred inside the White House. But the problem is the White House, about a day before he showed up, waived executive privilege. So that gave him two choices. He could either answer the question or he could assert the Fifth Amendment. If he wasn't asked to lie about the president, then he simply could have said, no, I wasn't asked to lie about the president. There was no reason to assert the Fifth Amendment if that was the answer, because he can't be prosecuted for saying, no, I wasn't asked to do that. The fact that he asserted the Fifth Amendment, I think, tells all of us that the answer to that question was, yeah, he was asked to lie about the health of the president, but he didn't want to admit that, and so that's why he asserted the Fifth Amendment. By doing that, he basically answered the question.
And Leigh, the questions aren't going anywhere. If more people from Mr. Biden's medical team are called to testify, could they follow the same path as Dr. O'Connor and refuse to answer the questions?
I guess anybody could follow that path. You know, he did put out a statement in 2024 that he was fit for duty. And if he believed that he was fit for duty, I can't speak to the mind of the physician. When he was doing that, he has his own lawyers that tell him what to do. But I assume anybody could. But I also don't believe that a physician would do that when you're talking about one of the highest jobs in the land. And we do take these exams very seriously. And, you know, you cannot have trial by soundbite, is what I'm saying. We don't have any documented, publicly available evidence to say otherwise at this point.
Hans, I'll give you the last word. I have 30 seconds.
This wasn't trial by soundbite. He was in a deposition, a long deposition in which he could
I'm
have
talking about
explained
Biden.
thoroughly as
Biden.
long as he, can I finish, please? He could testify as long as he needed to thoroughly answer the question. And he didn't answer a very simple question. Was he asked to lie about the health of the president? That is not covered by the doctor-patient privilege. It was not covered by executive privilege. If the answer to that was no, I was not asked to lie, that would have been a simple answer, and he can't be criminally prosecuted by anyone for that.
Hans Spakowski and Dr. Leigh Vinocur, thank you both so much for joining me this afternoon.
Thanks for having me.
Sources telling The Hill